Hello, I'm Melissa Shepard. I'm here to present to you today um, implementing a Salesforce archival solution with AWS. A little bit about me. I'm a Salesforce Certified Technical Architect, a CTA. I'm also B2B and B2C Solution Architect certified. I hold 30 Salesforce certifications. I received a golden hoodie at the first ever architect keynote during Dreamforce 21. I am a trailblazer and MuleSoft mentor. I have 22 years in technology and software development, with 17 of those years being in Salesforce. I'm the founder and CEO of Liz Tech Consulting, founder of Scale Up Arcs. I'm also the Boston Architect User Group Leader, and I'm the founder and admin of the Architect Ohana Slack. So let's get started. So you might be asking, why archival? So Salesforce is not a cost-effective or scalable solution for storing data and files long-term. If storage limits are hit, this can cause performance degradation once you get beyond 100%. You will need to buy more storage at this point to continue operations, so it's not always the best option to have to keep adding on storage just to keep everything on platform. So when architecting solutions, you should take into consideration your data and files storage and the growth of that storage over time. It is critical to define an archival strategy up front before your storage limits are hit. So you might want to store data and files for regulatory compliance, for legal purposes, or you might have data retention policies for this data. So you want to try to calculate a growth rate of both your data and files over time. So for calculating your file storage, for Contact Manager Group Professional Enterprise Performance and Unlimited editions, you're allocated 10 gigabytes of file storage per org. In addition to this, for Enterprise Performance and Unlimited, you get 2 gigabytes of file storage per user license, and that's for the full Salesforce licenses. So your file storage includes files and attachments, files home, Salesforce CRM content, chatter files, including user photos, the Documents tab, the custom file field on knowledge articles, and site.com assets. Next is data storage. So for Contact Manager Group, Essentials, Professional, Enterprise, Performance, and Unlimited, you are also allocated 10 gigabytes of storage for your data. So Contact Manager Group, Professional, Enterprise get 20 megabytes of storage per user license, and that's also the full Salesforce license. Performance Unlimited get 120 megabytes per user license. And there is a bit of storage that you'll get for Customer Community Plus, and I believe Partner. Didn't add that on here because it's very minimal, but you can also take that into consideration if you have a lot of external users. So an example calculation would be to have a performance edition with 100 users. For your files, you have the 10 gigabytes per org, and then the 2 gigabytes times the number of users, which is 100. So you get 10 gigabytes plus 200 gigabytes, which is 210. For your data, you get the 10 gigabytes plus 120 megabytes times the number of users. So you get the 10 plus the 12 equaling 22 gigabytes. So those are the types of calculations you'll want to do to figure out how much storage you actually have. Then you'll want to do a calculation on the current files and data, and then try to look back at the history to figure out where your growth rate might be. So you can figure out some sort of percentage that you grow per year, and you want to calculate this out for probably at least 1 year, maybe up to about 5 years, to see where your storage is going to be and to see if what you have is going to be enough for that time. If not, within that time, you probably have to think about some sort of archival strategy. But it's always good to have one in mind, just because there is going to be some point where you're probably not going to want to store everything on platform, just because it can have an effect on performance if you do grow too fast for some reason. So you might be asking, why AWS? So AWS is scalable, it's cost effective, it's secure, it's cloud-based, and it also easily integrates with Salesforce. So there's also many products for storage for Salesforce that work with AWS on the back end out on the App Exchange. So AWS provides a highly secure infrastructure, so they take security very seriously. There's also AWS Private Connect for Salesforce, which you can easily set up. So some of the AWS options are Amazon S3, which is storage for the internet. This is, you can store both files and data. So Amazon S3 stores the data as objects, which contain a file and metadata, very similar to Salesforce. So the objects are uploaded and stored in S3 buckets. There's also Amazon Elastic File System for files. So Amazon EFS provides a simple, scalable, fully managed Elastic file system. It automatically scales as you add or remove files, so you don't need to worry about provisioning capacity to accommodate growth. Then we have Amazon Redshift for data. So Amazon Redshift is a fast, scalable data warehouse that makes it simple and cost-effective to analyze all your data across your data warehouse and data lake. So this might be a better option than putting the data into S3. So maybe you want to use S3 for your files, Amazon Redshift for your data. Amazon also has the S3 Glacier, which is for long-term storage. So S3 Glacier is a secure and durable service for low-cost data archiving and long-term backup, which can also be part of your archival strategy. So what's really cool about this is you can set up AWS lifecycle configuration roles. You can tell Amazon S3 to automatically transition objects to less expensive storage classes, archive or delete them after a set period of time. For example, you can set an Amazon S3 bucket to archive objects to Amazon S3 Glacier after 30 days. Maybe you only want that data there for a short amount of time, and then you want to push it to a lower cost storage because you don't think it's going to be used after a certain amount of time. For you don't need it to have in these buckets anymore. So then you can even have it deleted after a certain amount of time as well. So the next thing we'll get to is the actual migration of the data and files. So you could build a custom solution using Apex, the AWS APIs, and the AWS JavaScript SDK. So Amazon Web Services has the SDK for Apex. So this makes it easy for developers to access Amazon Web Services in your Apex code, and you can build robust applications and software using services like Amazon S3, Amazon EC2, etc. Then there's also the Simple Storage Service SDK. So this is an Apex client that manipulates both buckets and its contents. You can create and destroy objects given the bucket name and the object key. So going to this route could actually get really complex, especially for archival and re-exposing data and files to external users once it's moved off platform. Then you have to think about things like security, who can see what data, and build that in somehow. This would be a slower time to market, less value for your users because you're not getting it out to them as quick as you possibly can. It also needs to go through your normal dev life cycles, environments, testing, etc. So some things to think about: when and how to move the data out of Salesforce. What is the trigger? Is there a time trigger? Is there some sort of status trigger? Are you going to do this in an automated way? Is it going to be a batch job? Is it going to be a scheduled ETL job that pulls everything from Salesforce and pushes it off platform? Is it going to be manual? Are you going to give a button to your users that they can click and then archive or unarchive something? You also need to think about when to hard delete both your data and files. You probably want to make sure it made it off platform first before you go back in and delete it forever. Also, you'll need to think about how internal users will access both archived data and files when necessary. Will you move associated files when data is archived? And then how will you expose those files to external users if they no longer can access the records that the files are actually attached to? And then you want to think about the security of your files and data. How will you adhere to Salesforce security once it is off platform? So that brings me to our next topic, App Exchange. So on the App Exchange, there are many products that can help you with all of these different issues. Something like SDrive or X-Files Pro for files. And we have Own Backup Archiva and Data Connectiva for data. These apps have many things built in, such as adhering to Salesforce security, being able to schedule archival, being able to unarchive, being able to expose files and data to your users very easily. So a lot of this stuff is already built in, so it might not always make sense to go custom. One of the tools that I got to know very well during my CTA prep was SDrive. It's a great option for migrating files. SDrive will adhere to Salesforce security for determining what files a user should see, especially for external users. It's great. It's easy to set up with AWS S3 on the back end. It's easy to show files to both internal and external users. You can set up scheduled archival, and you can even connect to other data sources, such as Google Drive, to bring in files to SDrive. Here's an example from an org where I had it set up where I have a file that is in a component that's associated to an account. And these are the files that are all living out on S3 in the S3 buckets. And that's the end of this presentation. And here's my information if you'd like to get a hold of me. I'm on Twitter. You can also find me on LinkedIn. Thank you.